I had a viewer that is extremely upset. He sent me an email and explained a new scam that we're starting to see out in the industry. It is absolutely heartbreaking how people are getting hosed, but these dealers are finding new ways to unleash tactics on unsuspecting buyers. And it's happening more and more where they're finding new creative ways to screw the customer over. And this is happening. So I got word from a viewer that actually shared this little story with me. And so the latest is this individual went out there to decide to buy. They wanted a used truck. They didn't want to spend the brand new prices because obviously they're extremely expensive. Buying new vehicles right now is something that it feels to be more for the well-heeled, because clearly for the middle class, it's a very, very tough pill to swallow. A lot of people are struggling to buy these vehicles. So all we're looking for is value, but value isn't necessarily what this viewer received, because they were looking for an upper trim level vehicle. They were shopping around for some time and they came across this vehicle, and it was a F-150. And what it was they basically thought, they walked into the dealership, there was this advertisement. They had this F-150 Lariat on their car lot. So they were selling this vehicle and it seemed to be aligned. At least the pricing was quite a bit more money than the lower trim level vehicles like the XL and the XLTs, which are generally a little bit trimmed down. But there was this Lariat and it was sitting there and the miles were decent and it seemed like it all added up. But what had happened was this individual went there, started to shop around, and realized, wait a minute, yeah, this is a pretty truck. I think I want to maybe buy this. So upon making the decision to pull the trigger and buy this vehicle, assuming, of course, it was an F-150 Lariat, which was an upper trim level truck, he was kind of hoping to go for, he didn't realize until after, and he started pulling the VIN. Now, this is something that a lot of people make a mistake too, because there's things like title washing. There's all kinds of other scams that are going on where these shady shade tree car dealers are taking now, vehicles out of state and doing a rework on the VIN. And of course, then some of the accident history or some of the other issues may not follow as soon as you do this wash of the VIN number. But there's a lot of shady operations, and this was yet another one. So what he had done was he looked at this vehicle, decided, you know what, I like it. It seems competitive, price-wise competitive with all of the other vehicles out there. When I compare this for, the year and the make, it was a pretty good step up from the XLT and the XLs, but it was something he wanted some of the extra features, like some of the technology. But what had happened apparently was this vehicle actually, it drove nice, it was perfect. You're ready to pull the trigger on it. So he looked it up, as most people should, and a lot of people are putting trust in the dealers. A lot of people are saying, hey, do you have a latest copy of the Carfax? You might even ask the question. And a lot of people will kind of stop there. They won't necessarily even hold them to account. I've been in many cases where I've been talking in negotiations with a salesperson, and you ask for that information on the front end, and they beat around the bush and show you this and show you that. Next thing you know, you all actually entirely forget about it, and they don't give you that information. So it's so critically important to validate the VIN number. Make sure it matches from up by the post of the door, the driver door. There's always either this on the door itself or on the post, and that has to match up, of course, with right at the base of the windshield on the driver's side. These VINs have to match, and most importantly, you have to do a Carfax, CarProof, or some other validation. Make sure that it's free of all liens. Make sure there's no accident history or it's no flood history. Where did it come from? If it was a vehicle that's a year ago was down in Western Florida, I'd be worried about that. If it was a vehicle that was on the east coast of Florida or Texas, southern tip of Texas somewhere, I'd be worried about that, because there's a good chance it might have been underwater and it could have even had a title wash. So what had happened now, what some of these dealers now apparently are doing, upon looking through the VIN is much more telling. But a lot of people don't go to that extreme. A lot of people don't necessarily follow that and actually go into that depth. But the VIN kind of tells you a little bit more specifics on the way the vehicle was built. So do a VIN check on it, do a Carfax, it's going to tell you a lot more information. But what they're happening now is, apparently, this is what I'm hearing. This Lariat was actually not a Lariat at all. And this person was paying top dollar for what he pursued and assumed was a Lariat. It wasn't a Lariat. It was actually an XLT. is they're going online, they're checking on their phones, and they're checking the stats and specifications for that make and model. And they're looking, what did the Lariat have that the XLT didn't have? So they're looking at this information. It might be a bigger infotainment screen. It might be certain features, and it certainly has badging. But what they found was, upon deeper diving, all the badging was there. The tech was in there, and it seemed like all the parts were there that would agree that it was a Lariat. But it wasn't actually a Lariat at all. Once he checked the VIN, once he started sniffing around, he realized that that wasn't the storyline at all. It was actually an XLT. And now the idea that these vendors are now trying to pitch a lower trim level vehicle for the prices and the value of a higher trim level vehicle. They're trying to squeeze and extract more money out of the transaction of every vehicle. We know that a lot of these manufacturers were jacking up prices on everything. Price adjustment fees, market adjustment fees are not something that was uncommon, and this was happening a lot. It was also, now what we're seeing is a shortage of a lot of used inventory out there. Why is that? Well, good quality inventory as in the 2-3-year-old products, because 2-3 years ago, those vehicles were coming off of, or would have been lease. There was less people taking out leases back 3 years ago, 2 years ago, because of the high finance rates. And because of the high rates, the Bank of Canada, the reserves, meant a lot of people were making choices not necessarily to buy or not buy. And leasing was definitely, lease rates are down. There's a lot less people leasing 2 or 3 years ago. Now, while it's starting to climb again, there was less people leasing. There was also less people buying a few years ago. And so what that means is now 2-3 years later, fast forward, and we're seeing a lot of these vehicles just aren't there. That late model used product lineup just isn't there. Not to mention, it's countered by the fact that a lot of people are saying, with the price of these new vehicles, I've got this 3-year-old so-and-so or 4-year-old Toyota or Honda or Ford, and if I had to replace this now, it's going to cost me $20,000 more than I paid for this one. It doesn't make any sense. So now what you're finding is more people holding on to their 3 or 4-year-old cars, and instead of trading them in or up, they're just not hitting the market. Neither have the lease returns because there were fewer leases in the first place. So now because of this shortage that we're finding in the industry, dealers in some cases are pulling other levels of trickery, trimming up some of these lower trim levels. And I didn't know, wasn't like that when I was there. And so ultimately, this is what's starting to happen. And I'm hearing more and more stories where people are running into this weird phenomenon where they have vehicles that are trimmed up. I mean, we see it all. We've seen this forever in BMW land, where everybody puts M badges on everything, even if it's not an M car. AMG, Mercedes, they'll put AMG wheels on there and all of a sudden they think it's an AMG. It's not an AMG. The true AMGs were hand-built. The true M cars were hand-built. Audi, same thing, the RS line. A lot of these manufacturers have gotten carried away, but now that's transferring down to the used car market, where a lot of vendors are saying, look, we can pull another 10% out of this vehicle. Let's just trim it up. Let's put in that extra, $800 module up front here, put in that interface, and put in a couple of other features and decals. We got to order an extra couple grand in material, but if we can make an extra $7,000 or $8,000 on the transaction, I think this will bode well. See, this is what's going on. There's a new scam, and I just want everybody to be aware of this. I've got people now that are reaching out to me. I'm hearing a little bit more of this. This is not the first time now I've heard of this, and I just wanted to bring it to light. No shortages of scams. This seems to be a thing. Now, I don't know if this is very isolated. I don't know if this is specific to individual dealerships, but this is happening. So buyer beware. Always check the VIN. If you found this information helpful, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm looking to build this channel up. I want to help you, the buyer, whether you're buying new or used, whatever. Make that right decision so it saves you some money. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.